Ladies and gentlemen, we are honored to take this opportunity to present our research at the Education, Leadership, Sciences and Humanities Conference. The authors of this paper are Professor Oldrich Kratochvil, Director of the European Polytechnic Institute Kunovice, the Czech Republic, and Professor Iveta Hashesh, the Vice Rector of the same college. This presentation focuses on the education system as a significant factor in global competitiveness. Since 1989, we have been researching at our private university, EPI Limited, in the Czech Republic, the transformation processes of the educational systems of the former socialist bloc countries. These have joined the European Union, and therefore had to transform their philosophy, strategic goals and strategy of their education systems to support the new society. Our country used to be a member of the socialist camp, and thus the ideology and goals of their educational systems were determined by the requirements of this group. It was a planned economy. In 1999, the Czech Republic joined NATO, and on the 1st of May 2004, the Czech Republic became a new member of the European Union. The other countries of the former socialist camp followed this path as well. As well as the Czech Republic, the other former Soviet bloc countries, Hungary, Poland, Slovakia, Slovenia, Estonia, Latvia and Lithuania, also joined the European Union in 2004. In 2007, Bulgaria plus Romania joined. And finally, Croatia joined the European Union in 2013. For all these countries, the main question they had to face was how to transform their education systems in order to promote the further development of their country as a new member of the EU. Over this vast new territory, the experiment of the transformation of their educational systems was thus commenced, with a successful outcome greatly influencing the development of their own areas and the entire European Union. This importance of modernizing the educational systems of their primary and secondary schools, and also their colleges in this territory, has now emerged as the critical factor in the competitiveness of the whole European Union, because the new globalized political and economic landscape of the world has introduced entirely new knowledge technologies and production based on research and innovation. The new EU countries have become a main part of the global competition between the European Union, ASEAN and NAFTA. In the battle between the European Union, NAFTA and ASEAN over future global leadership, the European Union now finds itself in a complex situation. Recent analyses that various EU institutions have published discuss the need for the development of innovative technologies, innovative strategies, and the joint development of science and research. However, little has been said about the most important issue of all, the barriers that are now hindering the development of the higher education systems of these newly admitted EU countries in comparison with the development of society in general and the corporate sector. The current development of Eastern Europe can be examined in the context of the mistakes that this region made on leaving the old socialist educational system and by examining the critical factors for its further development. The Czech Republic is a typical representative of these countries that are facing this problem. How did the transformation of the entire university system of Eastern and Central Europe in the 90s of the 20th century and the early 21st century actually occur? And what are the main problems now facing the tertiary system in the Czech Republic? We have already stated that back in 1989, Czechoslovakia moved away from a planned economy towards an economy based on market principles. It is logical, therefore, that this transition and change in its political and economic systems also required some fundamental changes and adaptation to its educational system. Above all, a change of the university system allowing its graduates to not only implement a market economy in this country, but also to be able to work in any of the advanced Western countries or multinational corporations that subsequently were able to invest in Czechoslovakia. Until 1989, only the state sector had existed in Czechoslovakian education. The private sector in secondary education originated in 1991, but the law legalizing private colleges was only adopted by the Czech Parliament in 1998. Society had expected that as quickly as the economy was being transformed from a planned into a market economy, similar changes in the educational system would have to be implemented, if not even faster. At that time, the total number of university students in the OECD countries had significantly increased. Their share increased from about 40% in 1995 to 60% in 2011 for the relevant average age cohort of these OECD countries. For example, the Czech Republic Czech Statistics Office shows the following data. Thus, the profile of the university system after 2001 has relatively quickly switched from an exclusive one to the concept of mass participation of students. This change has been necessitated by the development of society and its new technologies. In 2015, the Czech Republic was placed in the statistics of tertiary education only slightly below the European average. This increase in number of college graduates could not be met by the growth in innovative competence of businesses. Politicians and academics have expressed their concerns whether this transition from the concept of an exclusive university system to the new conception is now not responsible for the reduction in the quality of higher education systems. This question can be answered either in terms of employing a strategy that maintains a certain exclusivity, or from the perspective of approaching the social needs of the new knowledge society. As long as we desire to move to the mass participation system, our educational systems certainly require some major changes, which are their uniquely academic focus, the entirely inadequate integration of their content and processes with those of modern business practice. Their professors, associate professors and assistant professors had mostly never been involved in any work experience. It turned out, however, that the university system itself didn't have the necessary strength to carry out these substantial internal changes, and for many years its objectives and strategies weren't appreciated by society. They were specified by the higher education institutions themselves in order to maintain the then paradigms of the exclusivity period, when less than 10% of secondary school graduates studied at universities. Under the new organization of society after 1989, the university system was aggressively forced to accept some significant autonomy. In 1989, the management of the universities in Eastern Europe were accredited primarily by the internal parameters of the system, according to the number of professors and associate professors and their publications, and not by the quality of the output of the educational process itself, and the employability of its graduates and their contribution to society. In this way, the continuity and development of the educational system was preserved, but the opportunity to make radical inroads into innovation and readjustment to the modern systems in the developed countries was unfortunately lost. If these critical factors are not removed, then the system will not be able to produce any innovative graduates. Consequently, applied research has been gradually losing its economic efficiency. Although advanced technology, along with multinational investors, has started to come to the Czech Republic, universities and their staffing have often not been prepared to cooperate meaningfully with them. A significant portion of these professors and associate professors have never been involved in practical work experience. and have spent most of their entire professional lives in just one department. Although the government does invest considerable resources into applied research, the absence of any significant changes in the internal environment of universities means that this applied research in the Czech Republic is a black hole into which the government and the EU are pouring money to the detriment of the entire system. They do not even expect this financial means to pay dividends to the college and business sectors, or even to generate any new funds for colleges. Beside this economic damage, such an access to applied research results in damaging both their academics and students' thinking. It is therefore clear that the major structural change in the system of human resources, in line with the desired objectives, have become the critical factors in the development of higher education systems. Talking about knowledge management in such a system is therefore not possible, as the majority of applied research output results in just tons of paper. These documents, which have largely never been used or even read, therefore do not generate any real new knowledge. The linking of applied research with business practice and subsequent use of the applied research results is, from the society point of view, thus very inefficient. This is due primarily to higher education still maintaining the current personnel structure, one that is dominated by professors who have grown and developed only within the system of universities and have never been in any practical work experience. The problem lies with the fact that at the universities in Central Eastern Europe, the functions of a professor or associate professor is hardly ever held by any specialists from the working or business environment. This is because the function of a professor can be achieved practically only by being many years at an academic institution. Practitioner or specialist, managing director, chief engineer, author of patents, or anyone working in the real world who has not published in any academic journal can only be considered for the position of a lecturer at a university. Any acknowledged specialists, for obvious reasons, are therefore not interested in such a position. This is a critical factor in the further development of our higher education systems. Another critical factor in the development of the higher educational systems of Eastern Europe was the tough system of university governance by governments through their inelastic accreditation of universities and individual study programs. This leads to a high formalization of the university's activities and workflow. The actual quality of an academic's teaching, with its added value for the student, was, and still is, in terms of evaluating the quality of a university, seen as only a secondary criterion. But the main challenge that society has expected from a college or university has been not only the teaching of scientific professional disciplines, but also, and even primarily, the shaping of the personality of the student in his or her specific historical population. The absence of any of the components desirable in developing a rich personality and good citizenship of our graduates causes and brings with it significant losses. Europe is caught up in numerous corruption scandals. The social relations inside society and interpersonal relationships among its people are the worst now for the whole period of our lives. This is all due to such little attention now being devoted to the objectives and processes in the area of personal development and citizenship skills at our universities. This results in a low involvement of university students during their studies and also after graduation in public life. University students often live today in an artificial environment from which responsibility for themselves is frequently absent, and one in which therefore they cannot mature socially. Since this condition has lasted now for decades, it has caused a catastrophic lack of interest among young people in political life, engagement in the management and development of their society, and in community management. We can therefore expect many problems with the installation of a civil society. Corruption is emerging, which results in unprecedented economic losses for society. At a time of rapid development of high technology, its involvement in the management of the educational process is another critical factor. Technology of teaching is slowly passing into the interactive, creative approach of massive, open, online courses, and to the introduction of hybrid teaching, online systems, e-learning, mobile and other technologies, without which we cannot talk about any fundamental change in the system. We think that it makes sense to introduce into the debate a new definition of credit. It should be based not only on the number of hours needed for studying materials, but primarily upon achieving the acquired competence and to reach the necessary level of acquired new knowledge, skills, and competencies of the productive work of modern businesses and commercial activity. This should also include individual study courses. All of this, especially the large-scale development and application of e-learning, video conferencing, online studies anywhere in the world, mobile technologies, and the full engagement in the planning and execution of their educational development parts can mean a global revolution in the higher education sector, one that could accelerate while at the same time improving their university studies. If this is fully implemented, it can then encourage both the development of the economy and society as a whole. The Global Association of Universities tried in 2015 to evaluate the national higher education systems led by Professor Ross Williams of the University of Melbourne by joining in the search for a modern university system fully stimulated and innovated for nowadays and the future. They rated 50 countries and territories in 4 dimensions with 20 indicators. The report indicated the following order for 2015: the United States, Switzerland, Denmark, Finland, Sweden, Canada, the Netherlands, the United Kingdom, Singapore, and Australia. None of the Eastern European countries were even in the top 10. The Czech Republic was ranked at 23rd, the Russian Federation at 33rd, and Ukraine was ranked at 44th position. This position is not flattering for us. But Eastern Europe cannot complain by saying that they have not received any help at the beginning of the transformation of their economies in the 90s of the 20th century from their developed partners. In 1992, the OECD handed over an evaluation report to the Czech government, where there were many valuable recommendations for a strategy to build a new tertiary sector in the country here. Besides other things, the report recommended the introduction of more diversity into the sector, so that 20% of all new university students would be enrolled in non-university, professionally orientated bachelor degree courses, including short study ones, which would enable these graduates to meet the demands of corporate and business development. In this report, the OECD drew attention to the need for flexible personnel policies, including changes in the system of appointment of professors by universities and the full interconnection of the college activities with experience from real work. However, these Central and Eastern European countries responded to these recommendations very reluctantly. Only by February 2016 did the Czech Republic approve an amendment to the Higher Education Act, one which plans to establish new professional and academic fields of study. At last, a guarantee of bachelor study course may be a holder of a PhD, and only a specialist with a full master's degree, necessary experience in publication activities, can teach these courses. The other countries of Central and Eastern Europe are undertaking very similar processes of transformation of their tertiary systems. As we have already stated, especially regarding these countries newly entering the European Union, this low pressure from society towards the higher education sector and its internal inertia has caused a significant separation of academia from society itself and the corporate sector. Nobody in the Czech Republic can calculate the economic, moral, and ethical losses caused by the fact that higher education systems in the Czech Republic and other countries which were entering the European Union adapted so slowly to both their internal and external environment. This vast region lacked the institutions that would have promoted the necessary changes to the system in accordance with these OECD recommendations. There was no common or binding vision, nor strategic objectives and strategies for the development of educational systems that would successfully predict the future. All of the above critical analyses have proved this to be true. For the European Union, this rigid educational policy on such a vast territory can have a negative impact on its whole competitiveness. In the near future, we can expect the processes of globalization of the educational space in NAFTA, the European Union, and ASEAN groupings to accelerate even more. If these groupings do not create their own global vision, strategic objectives, and effective strategies for managing this process, it will, with great difficulty, follow the development of technology and the globalization of multinational corporations. The quality of human resources is what is going to decide who will be the leader of the world in the 21st century. If the strategies of these groups are not fully implemented, then the rapid development of technology will turn against society and human beings. Thank you very much for your attention. We are looking forward to receiving your questions and feedback. Please feel free to contact us at these following email addresses.